Hi everybody, welcome back. In this next sequence of videos, we're going to be looking at how economists think about measuring relationships, and in particular looking at causal relationships. A lot of time you may hear this phrase that correlation does not always mean causation, and we're really going to understand that in a pretty deep way. By going over the next series of videos and talking about the goal of econometrics, and we're going to start by thinking about the idealized setting, which best accomplishes that goal, which is going to tie in a bit to the randomized control trials lectures that we'll be discussing. But we're going to start with randomized control trials because they are kind of the gold standard as far as uncovering causal relationships. And then we'll move toward more practical regression techniques that we can use to try to do the same thing. And so just to show you a couple examples here where we have spurious correlations, or where sometimes things may get attributed to causing something, even though that might not actually be the case. First is kind of a funny one. This website here, it's called Spurious Correlations. The website there is on the bottom. And you can see that there's a high correlation here between people drowning in a pool and films Nicolas Cage appeared in. So this is obviously absurd to have some causal direct effect with each other. And this website has a whole bunch of quite funny ones if you want to go check it out. But the problem is that these spurious correlations get brought up in everyday life all the time. And so just an example of that, I found a screenshot of the unemployment rate under President Obama. And so by phrasing something that way, whether it's through, this president, that president, any president, a lot of economic things happening at a macroeconomic level have very little to do with who's in charge. And so, this was the result of the financial crisis back in 2007, from the subprime mortgage housing collapse. And so, again, this is a little bit more of a serious, spurious correlation, but this happens with presidents actually all the time. Whereas a lot of the macroeconomy isn't caused by presidents, although it may be correlated. And then just one more example here. This is from payscale.com, some salary data, and this is filtered or ordered by mid-career pay, and here we see applied economists are tied in third. So if you major in applied economics and management, is that going to cause you to have a $140,000 mid-career pay? Again, not necessarily. So just because you can declare a major and graduate in a field doesn't mean that, as a petroleum engineer, you're going to be making, or an electrical engineer making $100,000 right out of college. There's more to it, and there are a lot of individualized factors that aren't included, that maybe result in people majoring in certain things or taking certain jobs. And just simply by, okay, well, here's, if this is a causal relationship, the policy solution is, okay, everybody in the country can become electrical engineers, and the salaries are going to be a six-figure salaries. Again, that's absurd, and there are a lot more forces at play than just kind of these correlations. So ultimately, there are a lot of unobservable factors: individual ability, educational skill and quality, and things like that. And so we're going to use these to kind of guide our thinking of econometrics. And I'm going to start here with the goal. and principal challenge of econometrics. Oops. Econometrics is the elimination of selection bias, of the selection bias that arises from unobservable differences. That arises from unobservable differences. Okay, and we have many ways which we can use to analyze data or construct experiments to try to find these selection biases and these causal effects. We're going to first look at randomized controlled trials. Randomized controlled trials, or RCTs. And then after spending quite a bit of time on that, we're going to move to regression and other kind of regression techniques. There are some few other ones we'll be talking about: instrumental variables, difference in differences, regression discontinuity. But we're going to be spending the bulk of our time in this semester looking at different regression techniques. But this first one, to kind of understand the ideal, which is the randomized controlled trial, we're going to look at that and see what we mean. This is kind of obscure, but by the time we go through this first little sequence of videos, this statement should make a lot more sense to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. This is coming out of chapter 1 in Mastering Metrics. Randomized controlled trials, or just randomized trials for short. Okay, when we get random assignment, we're going to have a few things. So first of all, this is going to give us a benchmark by which the results from other methods are judged. A benchmark by which the results from other methods are judged. This random assignment is the best way to estimate causal relationships. And the reason we don't use it as much and we use other techniques like regression is because this is often not possible in practice. And we'll discuss reasons why. So this is a little bit of an outline about what we're going to be talking about, and the kind of underlying example which we're going to use throughout to kind of understand how random assignment works is this research question: what is the effect of health insurance on health? What is the effect of health insurance, which we're going to be writing a lot, so I'm just going to abbreviate that, HI, on health? right? So does having health insurance make you healthier? And, the answer to this question is really important. It drives a whole bunch of um, practice, but also federal policy. There's a lot of debate in the country in many countries, about universal health care. And so the answer to this question is quite important to start understanding things like that. Significant public health and political implications. Okay, so first of all, if we're going to start to answer this question, we need to think about what types of variables we're going to need. So one, we need to somehow measure outcomes. Somehow measure outcomes. And in econometrics, we'll often call outcomes the dependent variable. Y usually is the notation we give it. And the outcome is a measure we're interested in studying. Measure we're interested in studying. For example, health. So if we want to measure health, our health outcome, we have many possible ways that we could measure that. So you can maybe go ahead and think in your head of a few ideas of how we could measure health in order to think about how health insurance might affect health. I have a few examples here. So one, we could just rely on self-reported outcomes, like give a survey to some people and say on a scale of 1 to 10, how healthy are you? There are several problems with stated choice preferences and stated choice surveys in general, which we'll talk about later on. So what we could use is some actual observable outcomes, something like measuring body mass index, or the existence of ailments, right? So whether or not somebody has certain heart conditions or diabetes, right, or anything else like that. We could also measure visits to a doctor's office or hospital. Which isn't perfect, but it's just kind of ideas here. And many possible other ones, etc. Okay, visits to a doctor's office or hospital could be a little bit problematic, particularly if you're looking at the effect of health insurance on health, because if you have more health insurance, you might be more willing to go to a doctor's office just to check things out if you're not paying for it. So even if you're not too sick at all, if you're actually quite healthy, the visit to a doctor's office could be high or low depending on the underlying health system. So anyway, those are just several ideas, and we'll be looking at some actual research and some of the different measures they used here shortly. But in addition to the outcomes, we also need to think about the treatment, or the primary independent variable of interest. Okay, and in this case, another way to put it is the causal relation of interest. Okay, and in this case, with our example, the primary treatment effect is health insurance coverage. Okay, so we call this treatment. It's very commonly used in like medical and pharmacy research, a treatment and a control group. But we can use the same idea within economics. So econometrics. So we end up having a treatment group, which is those with health insurance, HI for health insurance. And the control group are those without health insurance. Okay, and so now we have a treatment effect. We have outcomes, and we're looking at, does having health insurance coverage increase health outcomes? All right, and what I want to show you is a table. Let me grab it. It's up here. Okay. So here's a table out of the book, Mastering Metrics, table 1.1. And here we actually see some summary statistics with people and a health index here. And what we have is we have husbands and wives, we have some health insurance, no health insurance, and the difference. And if we look at I should say the health index goes from 1 through 5. It's self-reported, where 1 is bad health and 5 is the best health. I guess I should say worst and best, whatever. So what we see here in the summary statistics is that those with health insurance have a 4 rating on their health index, whereas those without health insurance have a 3.7, meaning that people with health insurance have a 0.3%, or not percent, a 0.3 increase in their health index for the men, and a 0.39 health index increase for the women. And so what it looks like here, we have a treatment group, some people who have some health insurance, a control group, people who don't have health insurance, and we see, hey, it looks like health insurance has a positive effect on health, higher reported outcomes. But again, these are just correlations, and what I want you to kind of start thinking about, which we'll be discussing in the next video, is why can we not yet, with just looking at these summary statistics, why can we not say that there's a causal direct relationship between health insurance and health? Okay, so that's what we're going to be discussing in the next video as we continue on with these notes. I'll see you there.